Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. This is a timeless conference call, and today we have the amazing pleasure of counting with three of our industry leaders in Asia to join us on the Asian edition of Savills Talks at Home. Starting from east to west, we have Chris MANCINI, head of our Asian business, CEO of Asia-Pac, and also head of Japan. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Borja.
Hi there. We have Crystal Lee, CEO of South Korea, joining us from Seoul. And last but not least, Frank MARRIOTT, regional head of Asia-Pac for investment advice based in Hong Kong. Is that correct? Is that Hong Kong, that misty city on the back, Frank?
Yes,
brilliant. Okay, well, firstly, thank you very much for joining us today. The amount of people who is interested on what's going on in Asia, both from the business world and a personal level, it's huge. So your opinions, your insights will be most valuable. Let's start here, guys. There is a perception in Europe that you seem to be ahead of the curve, and somehow on the timeline of this, you played it earlier and probably better. Is this correct? I mean, let's start here. Crystal, you're at the office, correct?
Right, I am at office.
And you've been at the office for the last month or so?
So all of our staffs are office nowadays.
And
yeah. So our office has initiated and maintained rotation shifts for the past 4 weeks. But this week, all of us come back to office and reverted to flexible commuting hours.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
So how many days of disruption you've had from not going into the office, etc.? Any?
No, we only do the rotation working for 4 weeks, and we come back to office nowadays.
Okay, brilliant. Chris, I can see you are at the office, obviously.
Thank you.
Has confinement started? Is this continued? How's life in Tokyo right now?
So again, it's, different offices are in different sort of phases of this right now. Tokyo had been working on a rotation basis, 1 day on, 1 day off, for a period of about 3 weeks. And then in advance of the, we're going to get a state of emergency declared in Japan today. And we took a preemptive move last week to close the office. And so the office in Tokyo was closed from Tuesday last week and will remain closed all of this week. That's part of a broader government initiative where, very early on, the view was, the Japanese tendency toward social hygiene and, wearing masks as a matter of course, and bowing as opposed to shaking hands and kissing on the cheek meant that we would have had an organically lower amount of spread. The past 4 days until yesterday, the 3 days prior to that, the amount of transmission skyrocketed. So the government is going to announce a state of emergency later today, which will essentially mean that bars and restaurants are closed. Very little, and non-essential workers should work from home. The reality is that that's been, bars, restaurants, places of business have been open here without interruption since the outbreak of the crisis. And this is just an attempt to, flip the circuit breaker and try to stem what is, a pretty significant increase in cases. Other offices in Asia, look, Singapore went into full lockdown as of today. Australia remains in lockdown. India is in a very aggressive lockdown, but as you can see, the places that got hit earliest, like Frank is clearly in the office, as is Crystal. Hong Kong, and he's wearing a tie, and he wouldn't do it if he weren't in the office.
He did it for me.
I suspect he did it for you. Normally, you see Frank wears spandex when he's not working.
At
At least
let's do another call.
At least it's better than my baseball coach from Chicago.
So Frank, has your life changed at all in the smallest detail. I mean, to Asia, you guys seem to have come rip off the band very quickly. China, sorry. What? How's life in China?
How personal do you want to go, Borja?
No,
I mean,
no, let's stay at that politically correct level. This is likely to be seen by 45,000 people. So
okay. Well, in Hong Kong, we've only missed 2 days.
Okay.
So we've been in the office for the last 6 weeks, I guess, and basically fully staffed. We're doing mainly meetings. We're doing a lot of meetings, but still we're also doing a lot of calls. So I do a lot of international calls with funds and clients, but the local guys are still doing meetings. They're going with masks, they're going with gloves, they don't shake hands. They're actually visiting clients and so on and so forth. That's all our local teams are all out visiting clients. And I guess the reason why this is possible is because we had SARS 15 or so years ago, and therefore people in Hong Kong as soon as this outbreak came along, we respected this immediately. And up till now, we've only had 4 deaths in the city, which, bearing in mind we're on the front doorstep of China, is pretty remarkable. The only slight problem we've had recently is that we've got a lot of young kids returning from university in the last 2 or 3 weeks, which have increased the cases, but there have been no deaths, touch wood. We've done deals. We've done approximately 300 or 400 million US dollars worth of deals in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Deals are still being done. And believe it or not at that much discount. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty much business as normal. Life is not great because we can't now obviously drink and go to restaurants so much.
Sure, that changes life a lot.
It does change life. We can't do more than groups of 4, so on and so forth. But generally speaking, Hong Kong's bounced back. China, well, you've seen the news. I think they've just opened up Hubei province. And I think that the big indicator, for me anyway, was that Xi Jinping actually visited Hubei and in Wuhan about a week ago. So to me, that means basically if the leader can go there and feels safe going there, then it's pretty much safe for the rest of the country. All our offices are now back to work.
Okay.
And we actually have an office in Wuhan.
Okay, we'll go more into detail into that.
Okay.
Cristal.
Yes.
#1 city last quarter in Asia-Pac, probably in the world, in number of deals, Seoul. You guys have had an incredibly small number of casualties or infected. Why? What have you done right? Tell us.
Yes. Very luckily, our team's case. Last month, we closed the 3 deals, the Urban Hive Logistic and the LG Beijing deal. LG Beijing deal was the 1.2 billion US dollar size deal. And this month, we also signed SPA of 2 big deals, forwarded sales. The one is 500 million US dollars and the other is 800 million US dollars deal. So as of today, we record 3 trillion, maybe the 3 billion US dollars deal. We already signed the SPA and the closing basis. Yeah, so very good performance with it. The reason is I think it's very similar situation with the Hong Kong. We already experienced the SARS and the MERS, the virus. We already experienced this, so nobody panicked for that. So all the medical facilities operated very well, and our cases, the mask supply is not enough, but not so big issues for us. And maybe there is no large scale buying here, so many people feel stable here. And it does not mean that we feel safe, but we still can do our business like the normal situation.
Okay, so tenants approaching landlords for rental reductions, or lenders increasing their margins, or investors just saying, well, I'm going to take 50 bips more now because I can. Are you seeing that around, Chris?
No, not at all. I mean, you're going to inevitably, you'll see requests for rental abatements, whether it be rent holidays, whether it be, you know, free rent adjustments or deferral of rent payments until such time that the world sorts itself out. There is very little, if any, distress selling anywhere in Asia Pacific right now. You know, lenders here, LTVs in Asia tend to be much, much lower than they are in the Western world. So in terms of covenants being violated, DSCR tests being breached, we haven't seen any of that. I mean, if you go back to GFC, you know, we spent a lot of time negotiating back when there was some pretty aggressive leverage. We spent a lot of time negotiating on behalf of our clients to ensure that these tests were waived or at least deferred. And, you know, you get back to the ultimate reality that banks don't want to own real estate. They want you to own real estate, and they want you to service their debt. You don't see, I mean, this is not a blood in the streets moment. And
wow,
we're not,
that's
no
good
anecdote.
news.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to get rent reduction requests. We're starting to see them filtering in already. They tend, you know, they run the gamut of being very sensible. Again, you know, give us the month of May. Can we please have a rent holiday or tack it on to the end of our lease?
Okay.
Down to the irrational, which are, you know, frankly more opportunistic in nature than they are driven by necessity, where you'll, you know, see people say, you know, lower my rent by 50% for the rest of the, you know, term of my contract, to which you simply say no.
But my understanding is not happening to a meaningful scale.
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, but you plan this to happen?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
not necessarily within the office sector, but certainly within the retail space. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
We anticipate
that's
this.
been hammered. Frank, deal volume down 50% average, 60% on average.
Well, the stats out in, well, just first of all, going about rent. So we've already had rental reductions in Hong Kong big time, because that was the first place because of the protesters last year. So the retail market is absolutely has cratered. I would say that every single tenant has asked for at least 3 to 6 months rental reduction, if not no rental, and it's just beginning to hit the office sector as well. So most of the landlords are playing ball and they are reducing their rents. In China, of course, it's very different. The government own most of the buildings in China, so they've given an automatic 3-month holiday to all tenants in China. So that is one thing which they've done just off the back foot. In terms of volumes, yeah, well, I mean, I just did the stats for Asia Pacific on that spread I gave you. I think on average we're down in Q1 this year about 61%.
Okay.
Some of the markets like Hong Kong are up to about 85%, but on average it's about 61%. Yeah.
So is it
And I
coming
look
back?
forward to, just to add to that sentiment, if you look at the volume that Crystal has contracted in Q1, that represents essentially her matching all of 2019. And
Is that correct, Crystal?
Right? Yes.
Well done.
And
Thank
then
you.
in Japan, in Q1, we have done, in terms of traded volume, we've done all of 2019's volume in the first quarter of the year. So, I mean, if we shut the lights out tomorrow, our worst case scenario is that we've matched last year's volume.
Well done. Okay, so
And
Crystal,
In my opinion, yep.
sorry.
Yeah.
You
In my
wanna add to
opinion,
this?
also, yeah, the real estate market, due to the scarcity of opportunity for core office investment, the transaction prices are expected to see less significant drops, and yield range will be approximately the late 4%. It's very similar to the previous. And investors will be selective in reviewing non-core offices and the logistics sectors. So we expect maybe the 25 bips, the risk premium, the yield premium.
Okay, that's a data
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. But debt investors case, nowadays they have converted to office-only lending strategy and limited consideration of the industrial projects. But the retail and the hotel investment case, IC have been suspended status. So recently they don't review the retail and hotel here.
So hotel, retail stopped.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, well.
dead.
But for office case, yeah, the same. Yeah, the scarcity of the investment opportunity. So the interest is very high, and we are sure that we can close the deal. Yeah.
Frank, I see you unsettled in your chair when you hear that 25 bips only. Is that correct? What do you see?
In terms of, well, it depends on what sector.
Any risk premiums evident right now?
No,
Oh.
everything.
Okay.
Everything apart from retail and hotels in Hong Kong and China.
Where's the money going to? Is it private equity now capturing the money? Is it the large institutional funds? Where is the money sitting?
Well, it's split two ways basically. You've got already Asia-Pac dry powder is 35 billion US.
Okay.
So and that doesn't include obviously sovereign wealth.
That's money ready to invest.
Yeah,
You
but
only
not
have to
spent.
match the market.
Correct. Not spent. Not spent. And then you've got a further 70 companies who are raising a further 22 billion US.
Okay.
And that doesn't include sovereign wealth, REITs, or real estate operating companies, or domestic developers, which are just so liquid. It's just not true. So we have so much capital chasing such few stock. And just to give you one stat, Borja, in 2019, Asia-Pac concluded 150 billion US dollars of income producing.
Mm-hmm.
In the financial crisis in 2009, it was 60.
Okay, so half, so less than half.
If you think this is worse, then we are going to be sub 50 billion. So we're going to be a third of 2019.
It's not about what I think, it's about what you think.
No, that's what I think.
It's
That's
going
what
to
I
be
think.
50?
I think it'll be less than 50. Less than 50.
I see. But Crystal, I'm very interested. So over the last few years, plenty of your Korean investors have been pouring with money in the European markets.
Right.
If you had a Korean on the last 3 potential buyers, you knew who was going to win this. What do you think their reaction is going to be? Are they going to, some of them are going to get nervous and maybe we'll look at the sell at the 5 to 10% discount before it gets worse? Or some others are going to say, well, this is my time to buy slightly better. What's your opinion there?
As I talked to you, the Korean investors already experienced many crises. For example, the GFC or the IMF crisis. So they already have lessons that after the crisis, all the property price can keep high. So I think that nobody of the Korean investors, local investors, try to sell their properties in Europe very soon. And they still have the interest in the European market, but foreign exchange, the currency, can be the issue, I think so. Nowadays, the currency issue, if we try to invest in Euro market, maybe the currency, we can lose the 100 bips, the loss. So it can be the key issue, but it is true that local investors have liquidity is very high. We have a lot of money, and we still have the interest in the European market.
Okay, well, please tell them we're open for business, okay? We can do it from home.
Yes, of course, I will do it.
We work on virtual visits. We can do everything virtually now. It's not certain things, but most of them, okay? And so
let's introduce, if I may, of just a brief. Frank is a fountain of solid data and figures. But let's help place some of that in context, right? If we are doomed to a retreat from 150 whatever down to 50 in terms of 50 billion US of total traded volume in Asia in the entirety of 2020, bear in mind that, again, between what Crystal has done in Seoul, what has been done in Japan, what has been done in Hong Kong, and what has been done in the rest of Savills Asia Pacific, we've already done 10% of that volume in the first quarter of 2020. So I would never argue with Frank on statistics because that would be a fool's gambit.
And he probably has them in front of him right now.
He's sitting there looking at them. I can see them on his camera. You can't.
Yeah.
The reality is that I suspect we're going to be you know, Frank would be the first to tell you that when we've come out of other crises in the past in Asia, and forgive me for speaking of it as one monolithic region, but it bears some characteristics that are similar. We're no stranger to crisis here.
Yeah.
Frank has seen, you know, swine flu, SARS,
In
IMF
1815.
evaluation.
All of this. Okay.
know,
But let's concentrate on what are we to expect here. If you have the experience. So we're hearing about changes on building density. We're hearing about changes on how people is going to work from now on, customer expectations. Some people are saying this is going to accelerate commercial real estate as a service, something we were seeing already.
Mm-hmm.
Any of you, I mean, what changes do you expect to happen on a post-epidemic era now? To real
How
estate.
Controversial, and I mean, what do you want?
I want it to be controversial, Chris. I personally think that density might change, and that's good. But at the same time, I'll tell you one thing.
In everywhere but 2 Exchange Square, density will change.
Months after 9/11, people said, you will never sell a condo on the 40th floor of a building. Well, over the last 3 years, we've been seeing condos being sold on the 30th, 40th, 50th, 80th. We didn't even know you could build a condo on the 100th floor of a building. Billionaires Row 57. But let's think about, tell me, what changes are you seeing? You're back to normal, some of you, Cristal, Frank. What changes? Is people controlling temperature at the entrance? Do you have to keep social distance within the office? Any of you? You see any?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'll let Frank and Crystal answer in due course, but I mean, we temperature check every employee as they enter the building. We have been doing so for a month plus. There is, you know, an abundance of PPE, right? Personal protective equipment. There are masks that we leave for, you don't get into the Savills office in Japan without having a mask on. There are liters upon liters of hand sanitizer that are used by everyone that sets foot crosses the threshold into the office. You know, measures are being taken, and you know, whether they're effective or not will, you know, be borne out over the next few months, I suspect. In terms of fundamental systemic changes to our industry, yeah, you are going to see a decrease in density. You are going to see, which translates into a requirement for, candidly, we can only hope, more space. Which in markets that are already tight on vacancy rate bodes very well if you are a developer. People will want more distance between them and the guys sitting next to them. I think this is going to have a materially negative impact on a subsector of the industry that is already reeling, and that is the co-working space. Yeah. You know, I can regulate what I can do for Savills employees when they come into an office. I can't necessarily ensure that same regulation if, you know, it's 3 guys standing at a ping pong table with an IPA in their hand at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. I don't know where these guys have been, whether or not they've adhered to the same protocols that I'm asking of my staff. Again, I suspect that this, you know, the co-working industry was already taking its fair share of shots last year. I suspect this pushes them that much closer to the brink of annihilation. Okay,
Frank, Cristal, do you want to add anything to changes you see in the real estate sector immediately now or not? All right. I can't hear you, Cristal. You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, very similar to the Japan. Our building also installed the temperature check camera, and we wear the masks every day, and we use the sanitizer and wash our hands. Yeah, it's very same to Japan. And even though we would like to walk the street, we wear the mask. Always wear the mask, and the life with the family, the time is increased, but government, they instruct us to stay at home and make the distance, the social distance. So we follow the instructions very well. Yeah. So for the reason, I think the increase of the infection rate is lower. So nowadays, today, the only 50 the people new confirmation of the corona the virus. So it is very, very effective, I think. So yeah.
Okay.
The third thing, which I think is the most important thing, I'm afraid, it's very, very negative. So not only have we got the virus, we've got recession coming, and then we have a debt default cycle in the West in 2021 and 2022.
Prediction here. So how do we play
Too much
these?
corporate debt.
Tell me about the smart moves. I'm interested on that to finish off. What smart moves are you seeing on adapting to this and adapting to what's coming? I think it was Churchill who said, never waste a good crisis. Do you see any smart pivots, as they say today, from businesses into facing this, or not yet?
They're all going to move out to Asia. So if you've been to Mexico, Spain, London, you head out to Asia.
I'm on my way to Singapore. If Chris can approve.
I'll accommodate you. We'll find a place.
Honestly, I mean, are we seeing any smart moves there? Is there, for example, house selling? Is it happening? House sales? Is it happening virtually or not? It's just business as usual.
I think some of the residential sales, you're starting to see a reliance on digital. You know, a guy buying a condominium doesn't have a fiduciary obligation to his LPs or to the investors, the shareholders in his fund, or into the corporate entity. So you can do virtual home tours, for example. And in the parts of of Asia where that is an important part of our business, those adaptations are being made. I think, the reality is that, our European fund clients, and I know Borja, you and Frank and I and Crystal, we all share a fairly similar reservoir of clients. They're not in a position to buy things that they can't see. They're not in, and as long as there's a travel lockdown, you're not going to see that change in the very near term. If we're talking about, what the universe has in store for us in 6 to 12 months, look, I think there are answers. I have suspicions. If anyone has ever doubted, albeit them very dull, and I'm sorry if any of your industrial or logistics colleagues see this, albeit the shed space, incredibly dull space, if this crisis hasn't shown the importance of, last mile distribution facilities, as well as the importance of logistics and supply chain, then we're missing the boat, right? I suspect that the universe will double down aggressively on that. I suspect too that in certain markets, and I was having a discussion about this with our India colleagues today, there are countries where there are only 2 hospital beds per 1,000 people or per 1,000 residents. That is abysmally low. There are, and countries where the healthcare sector is largely privatized. I think there is an enormous opportunity for real estate firms such as ourselves, JLL and CB, et cetera. They all have nascent practice groups doing the same thing, but to look more into healthcare project management, healthcare design in some cases where appropriate. I think there are a number of pivot opportunities that are going to make themselves evident over the next 6 to 12 months. But I would go super long logistics right now. I would be super long anything healthcare related.
I see you nodding. Crystal, logistics,
yes.
Strong?
Yes, as Chris talked to you, the private individuals, there's no rush to sell their properties, residential properties here. They also watch and see, and as we experienced the previous crisis and the virus pandemic, so everybody, watch and see, the wait and see nowadays, but right, yes.
Okay. Well, listen, guys. Just to finish off, we plan to distribute this amongst our best clients and our co-workers, colleagues. What's your advice for the next few weeks, months, and how to endure through this and try to make the most out of business? Any tips?
Take time. Appreciate. Look, this is a horrible, horrible situation that we all find ourselves in. This is, straining the very limits, the breakable limits of every economy on the planet Earth, and all at the same time in a way that we haven't seen in 100 years, right? Or maybe less than that, maybe 80 some years.
Well, someone said, if you're going through hell, keep going. Okay,
that
that's
was also
where we are.
Winston Churchill, as I recall.
That was Mr. Churchill as well. Anyway, twice in the same day. Unless you want to add anything, I just want to thank you for your time. As someone we all know well would have said, there's a lot of fear and incapacity being blocked for 20 minutes or 30 minutes today in this call. So thank you very, very much. I'm glad to see that our offices, the spirit is up. We're trying to infect the rest of our offices with your positivism. So thank you very much. We hope to hear from you soon. Okay.
Thanks, Borja. Thanks very much.
Welcome, Borja.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.